is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome, Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. Today, he had some bad heartburn. He took some Alka-Seltzer, and definitely not Rolaids. Stu Horvath.
Yeah, it's me. No, I'm fine.
Yeah, I feel like for a topic like this, there's only like so many jokes I can make that have to do with antacids. I don't know how I'm going to squeeze Prilosec in if we have to keep going with this, but today we're going to talk about more Rolaids.
Definitely an unfortunately named line.
On so many levels.
Tabletop role-playing game products. It is what it is. I can't really fault them for naming it because they are aids for rolling and playing. Maybe they could have done role-play aids. I don't know.
I think that's worse.
Yeah, it's not a great name. However, I like these products generally. I like the line. It kicked off in around 1982, and they're from Mayfair Games, which had previously just been like a tabletop board game company. Rolaids marks their entree into the world of the lucrative world of tabletop role-playing games. And their plan from the start was just to be like, we're going to make, stuff for D&D. And they made no bones about it. The first 3 or 4 products were pretty cheaply produced. They were in folders. They didn't have art on the cover. They were like legal folders with like a cutout in the cover so that you could see through the cover to the first printed page where the title was printed. Very cheaply done. I don't have any of those because they're expensive and hard to come by. But I have everything else. I have the entire Rolaids line after the first 3 or 4 releases. And I love them because I love knockoffs. And that's exactly what this is. This is a high-end, sort of cynically developed on the business side to just cash in on TSR's success with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. But on the creative side, there's cool stuff. And we'll get to that in a second. But I kind of want to do the overview of Rolaids first. TSR hated this.
Oh, sure they did.
Surprise. They regularly hated this. And perhaps not the people that you would expect. Gary Gygax wanted to give them a licensing deal and sort of use them as, content generators for the game to kind of make the line more robust. But the board outvoted him. And there was legal action or legal threatening, saber rattling in 1984 and 83 that didn't amount to much. What happened was they basically said to Mayfair, cut it out. Mayfair flipped them the bird, and they came to an agreement, which was that the Rolaids products could use a very small AD&D logo and say it was compatible with AD&D, but it had to, like, there was all these sizing requirements, like the use of that logo had to be smaller than the Rolaids logo. It could only be used once in promotional materials. It could only appear once on the cover of the book. They couldn't claim that it was compatible with other role-playing games. And like there was all these like rules and requirements to how they could use the trademark, and then TSR backed off. And for years, Mayfair produces stuff, and as the years go on, they get a little loosey-goosey with the use of that trademark. And TSR, which had previously tolerated this under the previous administration, eventually got really tired of it in the 90s, and in 1993 sues Mayfair, saying that they violated the 1984 agreement, that they've been using the trademark without authorization, blah, 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 blah. And the judge is like, yeah, no, they did, sure, but like those things have to be fixed in future publications, but they do not actually void the previous agreement. So TSR lost. And this was really kind of a cynical attempt to force Mayfair out of doing this. TSR just didn't like it. They tried to use sort of loopholes with the trademark law to prevent folks from publishing D&D compatible stuff, which is allowable under copyright law, as we've seen with the OGL stuff in recent years. So because they couldn't sue them out of existence, they bought them. They bought the whole Rolaids line and then mothballed it. And it's a shame because there was cool stuff.
I mean, that is like some serious WWE, WCW shit. Like, you know, Vince McMahon was like, oh, if I can't beat him, I'll buy him. Yeah.
Right. I'll stick him in the vault. The original stuff, the original material is very opportunistic, I'd say. It has its own personality and stuff, but it is essentially just like, oh, we're going to do D&D stuff. As it grows in the 90s, Ray Winninger, who eventually goes on to run D&D 5e in recent years, he produced a lot of material for sort of a reinvigorated Rolaids line that was super interesting. Had a lot of interesting ideas and pushed sort of what could be done with the game. There's a box set for a different combat system, a box set for a different magic system. Under his watch, there's all of those demons box sets came out, which were sort of like directly competing with Planescape and presented like an alternate cosmology. They're pretty ambitious. That I think that they were sort of gaining a little bit of traction in the market, and that's why TSR was so aggravated about their existence. I like that stuff. That stuff's cool. But the stuff that I really love is the early stuff that is sort of like a mix of sort of unbridled creativity and crass knocking off of D&D. Almost, I feel like all of the early stuff features art that had previously appeared on other books, usually fantasy novels, you know, paperbacks. There's a couple that Michael Whalen. There's a Michael Whalen Elric cover on one of these, and it's so jarring to me because it has nothing to do with the contents of the adventure. By far, it seems like all of the vast majority of the covers are reused Boris Vallejo paintings, which I love. One of them is the ridiculous Boris cover for Nine Princes in Amber, which features a man in jeans, no shirt, a red cape, holding a sword and facing off against like a gigantic, big cat. So, and I just love that. I love that repurposing of art. The one module that I kind of want to talk about today uses a Boris cover. Looks like a Roman style soldier with some furs in a wintry scene up in the mountains, and he's surrounded by wolves. It's not very Boris-y in terms of like the rippling muscles and the shiny greasiness that his later work is sort of characterized by, but it's still sort of recognizable. And they took the trouble for this adventure to incorporate that into the into the adventure. It is actually the painting predates the Rolaids line entirely. I think that this came out in 84. It did. The Rolaids line started in 82, and the painting was painted in 1981. So it really has nothing to do with anything. But they created this King of the Mountain character in the module. But Swordthrust is a really great example of how batshit insane some Rolaids content was. Under the Rolaids umbrella, I should mention, is the official AD&D version of The Keep, the Michael Mann horror film.
Nice.
Which I adore. They also did a board game. Like, what? Why? But thank you.
Well, there's a monster, so clearly we could sell multiple different types of media off it because people love monsters and they love buying shit with monsters on it. So it must be a way to make extra money off of a Michael Mann movie.
Like a terrible one. Like it's not very good. It did terribly in the theaters too. And it was just like,
I mean, realistically though, it definitely was not Thief. Okay, like it's a very, very different kind of animal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Willie Nelson's not in it.
There you go.
But Swordthrust is legitimately very, very interesting. Written by Sam Shirley and Dan Greenberg. I don't know much about Shirley, but Daniel Greenberg went on to write an awful lot of World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade material in the 90s. Also has interior illustrations by Robin Wood. I'm not used to seeing Robin Wood doing, black and white illustrations. They're pretty good. And James Klaus does the maps. Robin Wood's art is interesting and sort of airbrushed. It's pretty good. Not as detailed or as ornate as Wood's painting work, but I'll take it. So the idea here is that there is something called a Titan asleep on this mountain. It's not really a Titan in D&D terms. This is a mile tall entity that sort of predates humanity and is connected to like deep forms of magic that are just far more powerful than anything that we can imagine. And he's up on that mountain and he's sleeping while he ponders the question of what good and evil is.
That's awesome.
It gets even better. He's up there and he's basically waiting for humanity to become sort of powerful enough that he needs to notice them or to reckon with them or interact with them. He'll know this because he has this special suit of mithril armor that he has scattered throughout the chambers of his brain. And he knows that he'll know when humanity is ready to deal with him and interact with him. When someone comes, collects all the pieces of the armor from the caverns of his brain, puts them all together, and sits on his throne. And that's basically what the idea of the adventure is. Your party goes into the Titan's brain and looks for these armor pieces. Now, there are some typical monsters who have taken up residence in the caverns of the Titan's brain because they seem like an ice cavern. But there's also a lot of magic going on. As I said, he's pondering the meaning of good and evil. So in the upper recesses of his brain are these like angelic entities that go about the complex, fixing, repairing, and cleaning it, and encouraging harmony amongst its residences. And then at the bottom is this slimy bog from which these reptile creatures are hatched. The reptiles, of course, represent the Titan's more base instincts. It's evil, characterization, while the angels are its better nature. And those two sides are in conflict. The reptiles obviously want to take over. And then making matters even more difficult is the fact that manifesting in many of these rooms of this mountain brain cavern are the memories of the or dreams of the Titan. And they are essentially real. They could become increasingly real over time. That the King of the Mountain fellow, who does not live in the brain cavern, he's a little bit farther down on the mountain and drove the resident dwarves off in recent memory. He's actually a dream construct that became so real that he broke his tether from the Titan and has taken on his own individual existence. But most of the ones inside the brain cave are still semi-unreal. And you could just cast a spell magic on them and they'll fall down dead. But because of those memories, there's a lot of potential for strange tableaus that you wouldn't expect to find in an ice cave. There's a reef full of mermen. There's a forest, the cypress trees. There's all sorts of weird things. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. It isn't as good as it could be. Like, it doesn't get nearly as weird as you might expect it to be. Like, when I'm saying, like, oh yeah, you're going to adventure in the brain of a Titan and his dreams are alive, you think that it's going to get like super weird.
Because you're like really selling me on this right now. Like, I'm on the edge of my seat being like, oh my God, that sounds like a novel I would like to read.
Yeah, because you're imagining like the most weird stuff imaginable. But it is really rather conservative in the boundaries that it pushes. Most of the shock and awe is just the contrast of strange environments, like having like a temperate forest in an ice cave, that kind of contrast. And it works, but it could definitely be weirder.
Yeah, don't tease me with a good time and then be like, oh, and here's the charcuterie tray. It's fine. I got it at the supermarket pre-cut. Like, yeah. How do you do that?
But it's like, this is 1984, like we're 10 years in. This is extremely high weirdness for D&D at this point. We're decades away from a Troika or a Silent Titans, which feels like directly inspired by this, which is like there's a whole bunch of silent sleeping Titans in the countryside. You go into their dreams, into their brains from Swordfish Island's games. And it's just like Patrick Stewart did that with Dirk Deckweiler Lakety illustrating it. Fantastic book. That one lives up to the weird that you're expecting. And I feel like it spins directly out of Swordthrust. I'm not sure that it would exist without Swordthrust, because like no one was doing this kind of weirdness in 1984. Like D&D, what was Ravenloft was 83, right? So like it's getting interesting, in official D&D land, but it's still not like getting like loopy. Manual of the Plains doesn't even exist yet. So I love Swordthrust because it's absolutely just outside of the norm of the period. I wish Swordthrust was a little more wacky, but there's nothing stopping you, the dungeon master or game master, from making it wacky. Just flipping through it, you can see lots of potential. There's nothing really stopping you from stocking each individual brain room with different modules from whatever game that you want to play. You could stick a Star Frontier module in part of this. Like you could stick a Troika module, or drop some Into the Odd. Like you could just put whatever you want in there, because you're literally playing through this creature's dreams. There's sort of like a limitless possibility.
Anything goes.
Yeah, it's great. And it's all a lie too. I love the fact that like it can't resist on screwing over the players.
What, you mean old D&D style adventures from the 80s? Pulling a heel turn, ripping the rug out from under the players and being like, haha, fooled you. You don't say.
So you get all of the pieces of the armor suit and you put them all together and you're wearing them. And then you have this profound compulsion to sit on the throne in the brain chamber.
Oh, that never goes well.
I know. And it's just like you're promised great wisdom and the ability to wake up the Titan and you'll be praised and whatever, but it doesn't. It annihilates you. It does wake up the Titan, but the person sitting on the chair is like toast. And then the Titan gets to decide the question of good and evil. And basically, like, if there's more angelic dudes from up above, 2-1 to the reptiles, if the players basically have killed a whole bunch of the reptiles, then he'll go good. And if there's the inverse is true, if there's double reptiles to angels, he'll go evil, which he's a mile tall. You really don't want evil. No. And in most cases, it's going to be some sort of wash where the numbers are still in the same basic proportion. At which point he'll sort of like shrug and then go back to sleep. So you might lose a character for nothing.
So basically, you might die playing chicken in a game of Don't Wake Daddy. And then if he does wake up, the world gets annihilated because you have this mile-tall god just kind of, walking the earth, which is a really bad thing.
Yeah, if he goes evil.
If he goes evil. I love it. I think this is, everything for me comes back to your Cthulhu game because you're like, yeah, he sat on the throne. I was like, no. Rest in peace, Ed's guy. But like, I think in the end of the day, that's the real spirit of all these old modules. It's like, hey, we could only go so far with this in X number of pages, but you guys can do whatever you want. I mean, and that's the beauty of RPGs. It's like, no matter what is written, you just interpret it the way you want to interpret it and you get weird with it. So I think all the seeds are there for a garden of like odd, which I love, which I think is, every idea you've told me so far is like, that's gold.
It absolutely is. It's 40 pages and you get not just the ice cavern, but you get like the surrounding region and like some, like there's a town or something, some dwarves, like there's a bunch of stuff. You probably could cut that. They probably could have really just like honed in on the ice cave, but that's not how things were done back then.
No, I mean, it's like, when you bought an old Nintendo game back in the day, you were rolling the dice to see if it was good. And like, you spent X amount of dollars, you're going to find a way to get that money's worth. That's not going to sit on the shelf.
No, absolutely.
You couldn't just go to Drive-Thru RPG and dial up something else,
Yeah, 40 pages. They cram this thing with a lot of stuff that is a variable quality and usefulness, but the stuff that's good is really good. And if it isn't really good, there's a lot of potential in it. And it's great to see, like, it is so far outside of the norm for D&D of 1984. It's great. I love it.
Awesome. You have any final thoughts on Roll-Aids?
So because I have all of the Roll-Aid stuff I got the last couple pieces this year, and in honor of the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, I decided to celebrate by doing a whole bunch of Instagram posts on what might be Dungeons and Dragons' biggest knockoff. So over the over the course of 2024, you'll be able to enjoy browsing all of the Rolaids line. So look forward to that, folks.
Hey man, when they zig, we zag. So this is another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can the people find you on the internet?
They can find me on Instagram at Vintage RPG. I feel like the Rolaids thing is going to unfold over 12 different weeks, so it really is going to be a year-long affair.
Sprawling. You can find me across the internet at John McGuire RPG, Instagram, the Twitter, the TikTok. I'm on Blue Sky. I haven't posted anything there yet. Instagram, Threads, I'm around. I'm posting more, though, because I have something to promote. September 5th, 3-2-1 Action, our first fantasy adventure. We are absolutely doing a legit fantasy adventure using the 3-2-1 Action rules. It's going to be a magic system. It's going to be awesome. It's called What Dark Knocking Comes in the Still of the Night. It's going to be completely badass. You can go anywhere where I am on social media, where I will be posting more because I have things to promote, and I'm getting married soon. Click the link. Get notified of launch September 5th. It's going to be friggin' awesome. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Basil Go-Go's! Basil Go-Go's! That's what it was, Stu.
What?
Basil Go-Go's.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah.
This isn't going to make sense to anyone who's listening, because believe me when I say Alex edited out this whole other part, but Stu knows, and it's Basil Go-Go's.
Man, I feel so much better now, actually, because there's no way I would have figured that out on my own. But it was like vibrating. This is great.
Let it be a mystery to you all. Like, show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. If you love the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerpg. We've got a behind-the-scenes look at Stu's book, which is called Monsters, Aliens, Holes in the Ground.
A guide to tabletop role-playing games from Dungeons and Dragons to Mothership. There isn't a single Rolaid in there, I don't think.
Shocking.
I guess it'll have to wait for the sequel.
Believe me when I say, when you see the size of this book, you'd be like, how could there be a sequel? There's everything. There's not. It's close, no, but not
even close.
You could also pre-order his book over at bookstore.com. It is dropping
October 10.
Crazy how time flies, because some people are going back to re-listening to older episodes like, wow, I wonder when his book's going to come out soon.
Yeah.
We got a behind-the-scenes look at his book. Yeah, behind-the-scenes look at 3-2-1 Action. We'll be posting some stuff. I think I'm going to actually start posting like little bits of like the weapons and characters that I create, because I come up with some really dumb stuff, to be quite frank, everybody. Like, real quick, Johnny Hardwick, voice of Dale Gribble, rest in peace. He passed away. One of my favorite shows in the world, King of the Hill. Dale Gribble, Rusty Shackford, great loss in the voice acting community. And, in honor of this guy passing, I wrote this insane special item that is like 100% a Dale Gribble item that I'm going to use in an upcoming game. So I'll be posting about it soon. But, we got early release episodes, usually on Friday, depending on when we get these recorded, get these edited. We got a killer Discord community that we love for you a part of. At Stu's tier, you have West Marches, an ongoing campaign. At the $3 tier, I run games for the patrons. This month, I'm doing Honey Heist.
Nice.
You voted. I responded, Honey Heist. I'm actually probably running it. Today's like Tuesday. I'm running it tomorrow. So by the time this episode dropped, me and some patrons will have already heisted as bears wearing hats. Would love for you to be a part of it. We got some cool stuff going on there. Patreon.com/vintagerpg. And that's it for Stu Horvath. I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dega West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.